As any parents probably, mine like to tell stories about me from when I was younger. There's especially this one story that they like to tell about from the time when I was in kindergarten. My kindergarten group had a trip to a nearby forest, but my day was cut short. My parents got a call to their place of work that they should come and pick me up, and I was picked up from the side of the forest. But what makes this story especially interesting is the reason that my day was cut short. Apparently, one kid from our group has started picking on another kid, and I had intervened. And not just briefly intervened, but really intervened with fierce power. With this little toddler me was so adamant and so determined on defending a kid that was getting picked up on, so that eventually the bully and me were both sent home for that day. And I have this clear picture of me storming out into the schoolyard when I was 8 years old. I was huffing and puffing about the fact that our break was cut short because a lesson had run long. I can't quite remember why one shorter break was the end of the world for me, but I do remember the sense of injustice that I felt. I remember thinking, even at 8 years old, that why were we, students, young people, punished for something that we had no control over? I was ready to start a riot right then and there about this thing, but eventually the break ended when it was supposed to. I got a lecture for not conveying my opinions so constructively. And after that, the big injustice of a shorter break was just left at that. But even if these memories have faded over the years and are now just stories that I may one day tell my kids and have a laugh about, there's a strong sense of righteousness hasn't faded away. On the contrary, it has grown stronger. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Markkula, and that same inability to stay quiet is the reason that I stand before you today. That burning passion for righteousness and the need to act when something isn't quite fair or just has led me from being a small child advocating in my school and city to me now being a 20-year-old young woman defending young voices and the next generation in international arenas. I got my start on being a youth advocate at quite an early age. 8-year-old me, who was ready to start a riot, didn't know about any youth organizations or councils. But a 9-year-old me did hear about a student council in my elementary school. As you can probably guess, this fiery child didn't take long to put her hand up to be elected to represent my class in the student council. I remember the joy I felt when I heard that there was an actual place to make a difference, to make my voice heard. Because before that, I had felt so powerless in front of all the injustices that I have faced and saw. And even if the injustices of my childhood weren't something that I would consider to be big today, they were significant to me as a child. As a child, things like school lunches and sports equipment for school breaks were things that mattered to me. And those were the kinds of things that we discussed in the student council of an elementary school. And when it came time to select the chair of the student council, I remember writing my speech. I remember taking out my family's old computer, opening up Microsoft Word, a very, very old version of it, and writing up a speech, decorating it with the color pink and flowers and hearts, only just to forget the speech at home when it was the day of the student council meeting. It was nerve-wracking to stand before the student council, especially because it was made of mostly older students, fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders. But I do remember that I got the same respect as everyone else. There wasn't any hierarchy based on age or experience, but the playing field was equal. And I think that's the reason that I got elected as chair. Not long after that, I was elected to the children's parliament of my city. And when it came time to have our first meeting, this time I didn't forget my speech back at home. Once again, the room was full with kids older than me, but the playing field was still equal. It was made clear to us from the very first moment that in this group, everybody would get along, regardless of age, and we would act in the group as equals. And by the end of that meeting, I found myself as the president of the Children's Parliament of Tampere at 10 years old. And for the next 4 years, I spoke and advocated for the children in my city. And these years were full of events, new friends, and new experiences. And after those years, there was no doubt in my mind that I wouldn't continue on this same path, and I ran for the local youth council. And the rest is pretty much history. Ever since then, I've been a full-on youth activist and advocate, and my calendar has been full of meetings, councils, youth organizations for as long as I can remember. I've been a president of a youth council. I've been a vice president of a national youth organization. I've represented Finnish youth abroad, and most recently, I was chosen to be the youth delegate from Finland to the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe. I found what I most love in the world, my place where I feel like I belong, lifelong friends and networks from all around Finland and Europe. This journey, however, hasn't been without its hardships. During these past 10 years, I've often found myself to be the youngest, the smallest, the most inexperienced person in the room, and often also the only woman. I've been too loud, too young, too opinionated, and just too much for more times that I can count. For example, during my time in the Children's Parliament, I vividly remember the older kids from the Youth Council laughing at us, brushing us off, and urging us to keep to our juices. And when I got old enough to be in the local youth council myself, I remember the older kids calling us, the new youngest ones, younglings and brats with a condescending tone. These comments and the tone of voice used to make these have been burned in my mind. They didn't, however, discourage me. On the contrary, little did these older kids know that I was ready to give them a piece of my mind anywhere, anytime, just like I had been doing since kindergarten. Nobody who has left me or others feel small over the years knew that the sense of injustice they made me feel from experiencing injustice myself or from seeing others experience it was just adding fuel to the fire. They helped me decide that when I grow up, the one thing that I don't want to be is like them. For me, no one would be ever too young, too eager, or a brat. They would all be just right and valuable. And if I would ever be in their shoes, in a place of power, I would never treat others the way they had treated me. So when someone asks me, why do I do this thing that I do? And why do I do it even with the hardships and even after all these years? The most honest answer I can give is that when I look in the mirror, I see a 10, 12-year-old me. I see a girl that started this all, a girl that burned out for the first time at age 14, a girl that was dismissed and called too young, and a girl whose confidence has been rocked so many times over the years. I do this for that little girl, and so that every little girl and every kid that comes after me and us wouldn't have to face the same hardships that I have faced, and so that they wouldn't be dismissed in the way that I was. Those who come after me and us are the thought that pushes me forward. And whenever I faced hardships during this journey, or just any hardships that one might experience while going through life, I've been able to push through with the thought that there will be others just like me. Other young kids that will need somebody to speak for them and fight for them, just like I would have needed somebody to fight for me when I was feeling powerless. And still to this day, I understand why that 9-year-old me was so excited to find a place where she could voice her opinion, because I know what it feels to be powerless. I remember what it was like to be an 8-year-old without a student council in my school, and I remember what it was to live without being able to being heard. Because even later in life, every time there has been a situation where I didn't have a way to make myself heard, or I didn't have a say in the things around me, that same feeling of powerlessness has crept in. And we have so many people in our society, especially children, who are feeling powerless. And that is the reason it's so important to hear all kinds of voices. Not just to have everybody's input, that is of course important as well, but especially because of the feeling that you get from being heard. The feeling that we all deserve, the feeling of importance and the sense of belonging. So to those who are feeling powerless, to those next little ones who have big dreams and are hoping to one day change the world, I say that your voice matters. And I hope that you go for every opportunity you see or is thrown your way. Because no one is too small or too different. Because every voice is too important to be left unheard. And if anyone tells you, any of you, any different, don't just leave them unheard and ignore them. Prove them wrong and let them feel your fire. And to those of you who have the power and opportunity to give power to others, I hope that you look for those who don't yet have any. And please, be for others the people you would have needed when you were younger. Thank you.